British Airways is ruling out any plan to move all its Accra-Heathrow flights to Gatwick following the introduction of the Gatwick-Accra-Gatwick route 3 times a week. British Airways in 2021 announced a decision to move flights from the premium Heathrow Airport to Gatwick, a decision that was seriously rejected by the government. There are fears that this new Gatwick operation is part of a grand scheme to return to that plan that was abolished. But in an exclusive interview with Joy Business in London, Chief of Planning and Strategy at British Airways, Neil Alan Chernoff, said there was no such plan on the table.
Ultimately, what we were looking to do was to be able to grow our capacity between London and Ghana. And by adding those 3 additional frequencies, we were able to increase our seats by about 35%. And in fact, we've already announced that in April of next year, we're going to go to 4 weekly flights instead of 3. And so we'll see an additional 55% increase in seat capacity. For us, when we're looking to add routes and whatever that destination is, I mean, ultimately, we look at one, where do we have aircraft available, and is there something unique that we can provide by serving a destination from multiple airports? One of the biggest challenges we've had as we've been recovering from the pandemic was we grounded our 747 fleet. We currently have 12 less long-haul aircraft than we had pre-pandemic, and so often finding aircraft to be able to grow is really challenging for us. One of the advantages that we thought about offering the additional flights from Gatwick was if you actually look at where individuals who are flying to Accra to visit friends and family, tourism, business, or individuals from Ghana who are visiting London. There's various parts of London into which those individuals are traveling, and there's actually a large community of people where Gatwick Airport is actually more convenient for them than Heathrow. And so I think the benefit of offering that dual airport is, one, the importance of the flight to London allows us to provide some pretty unique connectivity to the United States and Canada. With Gatwick, although we do have less connectivity there, we do have a short-haul operation there, and that can provide connections to more tourist destinations around Europe. And so we think those two offer kind of a balance of choice for customers.
So I get it right, more of trying to offer connectivity to a lot of Ghanaians who are living in that part of London to connect to Accra.
Yeah, and like I said, if you look at kind of various areas where people either originate or may be visiting in London, there is a certain part and a large group of people who actually Gatwick is a much more convenient airport, and that is not necessarily, we do that across our network. As an example, we offer lots of flights to New York from London, but we also offer a flight from Gatwick because for some individuals that's a more convenient airport. Similar thing to Cape Town, similar thing to Las Vegas, to Orlando, and so it is something we do across the system.
Let's talk about price, and I know that for you it's about the routes. Price could be another responsibility, but again, what is the price difference? If I'm flying to Heathrow and Gatwick, is there any differential in terms of pricing, or it's virtually the same? For some normal passenger, they'll be thinking about price being a major decision in taking that decision to fly or not to fly.
Look, I think price is very dynamic in the market. It depends what other airlines are offering a price, and also very dependent on supply and demand. Now, it is true that Gatwick as an airport is a less expensive airport in which to fly into, and so the cost that passengers or airlines pay at that airport is much less than Heathrow. Heathrow is one of the most expensive airports in the world, and ultimately that does end up in the ticket price. You probably would. Mauritius recently moved their flight from Heathrow to Gatwick, and maybe part of that was around that. But one of the other things too is that if you look at the aircraft that we fly, so we're flying the 350 from Heathrow, and we're flying a 777 from Gatwick. That 777 has more economy seats. It's less premium heavy, and so that should offer kind of more access, particularly for those who are trying to fly into economy, better pricing because there'll be more seats in the market for them.
So I get the fact that if someone is flying from Gatwick to Accra, it will be less expensive than flying from Heathrow to Accra.
Well, I think, like I said, pricing is very dynamic and it depends a bit on demand. But because if you look at the way, ultimately what in an airline price is what the airline charges, but then what the airport charges on top of that. And what the airport charges on top of that is less expensive at Gatwick than at Heathrow.
You mentioned Air Mauritius moving from Heathrow to Gatwick. For a lot of Ghanaians and for people who are flying from Accra to London, there's a history, and they are worried about your plan to offer more options for people who are flying to London. They fear that there could be a future plan where people who are flying from Accra to London will lose the Heathrow route. And there's a history. And so how do you diffuse those who are worried about the fact that maybe there is a grand plan in the future that people flying from Accra to London will lose the access to the Heathrow route?
Look, I can guarantee there is no plan to sort of start the route from, let's say, Gatwick and move the Heathrow route over to Gatwick. We've been flying to Ghana for 86 years. I looked that up recently. And look, there was a time, this goes back, I believe, 2 years ago, where we looked to move the Heathrow route to Gatwick. And at the time, that was because we were very, very constrained on capacity at Heathrow. And as we were trying to balance how can we utilize our aircraft at Gatwick, utilize our aircraft at Heathrow, we had looked at making that move. And one thing that Gatwick tends to work well is if there are more point-to-point passengers, because we do offer less connectivity than Heathrow.